The first sound I heard in 3 weeks was my son Kevin saying, "She's sitting on over 2 million, plus this house is worth at least 800,000. My daughter-in-law Amber's response made my blood freeze. "And she's completely deaf, so we can plan right in front of her stupid face." I'd been pretending my hearing was still gone for 2 days. But what I heard next would destroy their lives forever. Let me start from the beginning. I'm Margaret Thornfield, 71 years old, and I used to teach piano to the sweetest children in our neighborhood. My husband Robert passed 5 years ago, leaving me comfortable but lonely in our big house on Maple Street. Kevin was my only child, and despite his struggles with his real estate career, I loved him with all my heart. When he married Amber 3 years ago, I welcomed her like the daughter I never had. Everything changed on that terrible Tuesday in October. I was carrying laundry upstairs when my slipper caught on the carpet runner. The fall down those hardwood stairs felt endless. I remember the crack when my head hit the banister, then nothing but darkness. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later to Kevin's worried face hovering over me. "Mom, can you hear me?" I watched his lips form the words, saw the genuine concern in his eyes. I tried to respond, but realized I couldn't hear my own voice. The world had gone completely silent. Dr. Martinez, a kind man with gentle eyes, examined me thoroughly. I watched his lips carefully as he spoke to Kevin and Amber. The fall caused severe swelling around the auditory nerve. The surgery to relieve pressure on her brain went well, but I'm afraid the hearing damage appears significant. "Will it come back?" I read Kevin's lips as he asked, seeing the worry creasing his forehead. Dr. Martinez's expression was cautious. "Sometimes patients recover fully, others partially, and some never regain their hearing. We'll monitor her progress. But you should prepare for the possibility that this could be permanent." Amber squeezed my hand and mouthed slowly and clearly, "We're here for you, Margaret." Her face showed nothing but compassion and love. They moved into my house the day I came home from the hospital. Kevin wrote on a notepad, "Just until you're back on your feet, Mom. Amber and I want to take care of you." For the first 2 weeks, they were absolutely wonderful. Kevin would sit with me in the evenings, showing me old photo albums and writing funny stories about his childhood on his notepad to make me smile. Amber cooked my favorite meals and was endlessly patient with my struggles to communicate. I watched her learn basic sign language from YouTube videos, practicing the gestures over and over to help us talk better. I felt so grateful to have such loving family during the darkest time of my life. How adorable that I thought their sudden devotion was genuine instead of them just waiting for me to die quietly. When I saw them whispering to each other occasionally, I assumed they were just discussing my care or trying not to burden me with their worries. Then, everything changed. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because this gets absolutely insane. It started on a Wednesday morning in my 3rd week home. I was sitting in my recliner, working on a crossword puzzle, when I heard the faintest sound, like water running through pipes. I froze, pencil halfway to the paper. Could it be? I sat perfectly still, straining to detect anything else. There, the refrigerator humming. So quiet I almost missed it. But definitely there. My hearing was starting to come back. Over the next 2 days, sounds trickled in like a gentle stream becoming a river, the clock ticking on the mantel, birds chirping outside my window, Kevin's footsteps on the hardwood floors. And then, I heard something that changed everything. I was pretending to nap in my chair when Kevin and Amber came into the living room. They moved quietly, clearly thinking I was asleep in my silent world. "How much longer do we have to keep up this caring act?" Amber's voice was sharp and irritated, completely different from the gentle tone she used when facing me. "Just until we figure out the next step," Kevin replied casually. "But honestly, this might work out better than I thought." My heart started pounding, but I forced myself to keep my breathing steady and my eyes closed. "What do you mean?" Amber asked. "Think about it. She can't hear us. She's completely dependent on us. And she trusts us completely. We have total access to everything now." Ah, yes, the classic mistake of underestimating a woman who spent 30 years managing classrooms full of sneaky teenagers. "I've been going through her papers while she naps," Kevin continued. "Mom has way more money than I ever realized. Her bank statements show over $1 million in savings alone." "Seriously?" I could hear the excitement in Amber's voice. "That's not even counting her investment accounts or the value of this house. We're talking about serious money, Amber, Over 2 million total. I heard papers shuffling as they went through my private financial documents. Look at this statement. She's got stocks, bonds, retirement accounts she never even touches. She's been living like she's poor when she's actually loaded. The casual way they discussed my money, like it already belonged to them, made me feel sick. So, what are you thinking? Amber asked. I'm thinking that if she's going to be deaf and helpless anyway, maybe we should be the ones managing her finances. For her own protection, of course. She'd have to sign papers for that, Amber pointed out. Kevin laughed quietly. She trusts me completely. If I tell her it's for her safety, she'll sign anything I put in front of her. She can't even hear the lawyer explain what she's signing. They were planning to steal from me, and they thought it was funny. Kevin always did have a twisted sense of humor. I just never thought it would include robbing his own mother. You know what else I've been thinking? Amber said. She really can't live alone anymore. Not like this. Maybe we should look into assisted living facilities. That's actually brilliant, Kevin agreed. If she's in a facility, we could manage everything for her. The house, the money, all of it. And those places are expensive. It would be totally reasonable for us to sell the house to pay for her care. How expensive? Amber asked. The nice places run about $4,000 a month. But think about it. We'd have this whole house to ourselves, and complete control over her assets. I lay there in shock, listening to my son and his wife plan to rob me blind and ship me off to a nursing home like an unwanted piece of furniture. She won't last much longer anyway, Amber said casually, like she was discussing the weather. I mean, she's already showing signs of confusion since the accident. That was a lie. My mind was as sharp as ever, apparently sharper than theirs, since they couldn't figure out that talking about murdering someone 10 feet away from them might not be the brightest idea. The sooner we get her settled somewhere, the better, Kevin agreed, for everyone involved. As their footsteps moved toward the kitchen, I made a decision that would change everything. My hearing had returned, but they didn't need to know that. Let them think I was still helpless and deaf while I figured out exactly what they were planning. I had no idea how much worse their betrayal would get. For the next few days, I perfected my act. I continued responding only to visual cues, pointing and gesturing when I needed something. I kept my expression blank when they spoke around me, showing no reaction to sudden noises. Meanwhile, I listened to every conversation. I looked up that assisted living place you mentioned, Amber said while making breakfast. Sunset Manor. They have an opening next month. Perfect timing, Kevin replied. I've been talking to Jake from my office about getting the house appraised. Already? Amber sounded surprised. We need to know what we're working with. Jake thinks in this market we could get at least $800,000. Maybe more if we stage it right. I sat at the kitchen table, slowly eating my oatmeal and pretending not to hear them planning to sell my home out from under me. What about her stuff? Amber asked. All this furniture, the piano, her personal things? Estate sale, Kevin said without hesitation. Most of it's just old junk anyway. The piano might be worth something. It's a decent brand. That piano was where I'd taught hundreds of children over 30 years. It was where Kevin himself had reluctantly taken lessons as a boy. Now he was calling it old junk and planning to sell it for cash. Have you thought about the will situation? Amber asked quietly. What do you mean? Well, if she's going to be in a facility long term and if her condition gets worse, Amber paused. I just think we should make sure everything is set up properly. Kevin was quiet for a moment. The will hasn't been updated since Dad died. Everything comes to me as the only heir. But what if she decides to change it? What if she gets suspicious? She won't, Kevin said confidently. She trusts me completely, and she can't hear what lawyers tell her anyway. Besides, in her condition, we could probably argue that she's not mentally competent to make those kinds of decisions. I wasn't incompetent. I was sitting 10 feet away, understanding every word of their scheme. I've been doing some research, Amber said, lowering her voice, about elderly care and medication management. What kind of research? Did you know that older people often have bad reactions to multiple medications? Especially after head injuries. Sometimes the combinations can cause confusion, memory problems, even more serious complications. Nothing says loving daughter-in-law like researching creative ways to poison your husband's mother. I was starting to understand why Amber's nursing career had been so short-lived. Kevin's voice sharpened with interest. What are you saying? I'm saying that if someone were already taking several medications for legitimate reasons and they accidentally got a higher dose or the wrong combination, it would look completely natural, especially in someone her age with a recent head injury. The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of my spoon scraping the bowl. I kept eating, kept my expression neutral, while my son and daughter-in-law discussed drugging me. That's... Kevin started. That's what? Amber asked. That's actually smart thinking, he finished, just in case her condition doesn't decline naturally fast enough. I managed to swallow my last bite of oatmeal without choking, but inside I was screaming. They weren't just planning to steal from me and abandon me. They were planning to kill me. That afternoon, while Kevin was at his office and Amber was grocery shopping, I acted quickly. I called the one person I trusted completely, Harrison Webb, the lawyer who'd handled Robert's estate. "Margaret, how wonderful to hear from you," Harrison said warmly. "How are you recovering from your accident?" "Harrison, I need to see you urgently," I said, keeping my voice low even though I was alone. "And I need you to promise me something. No one can know about this meeting. Not Kevin, not anyone." His tone grew concerned. "Of course. Is everything all right?" "No," I said simply. "It's not. Can you come to the house tomorrow around 10? Kevin and Amber will be out running errands." "I'll be there." The next morning, Harrison arrived exactly on time. When I answered the door, speaking clearly and moving normally, his eyes widened in shock. "Margaret, you're hearing. You can hear me perfectly." "Yes, and that's exactly the problem. Come in quickly." I told him everything. The returned hearing, the overheard conversations about stealing my money, their plans to put me in a nursing home, and most horrifying of all, Amber's research into medication, accidents. Harrison's face grew paler with each revelation. "My God, Margaret, you're talking about elder abuse, financial exploitation, and potentially attempted murder." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I said firmly, "and I need your help to stop them. We need to call the police immediately." "Not yet," I said. "Right now it's my word against theirs, and they'll just claim I'm confused from the head injury. I need more evidence, something that will hold up in court." Harrison leaned forward. "What do you want to do?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "First, I want to change my will, completely. And then, I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves with." We spent the next hour drafting a new will. Everything, the house, the investments, every penny, would go to various charities. Kevin would inherit exactly $1, with a note explaining it was more than his betrayal deserved. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Harrison asked as I signed the documents. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." After Harrison left, I made another call to Joe Martinez, who owned a security company and had installed systems for half the neighborhood. His son Tommy had been one of my favorite piano students. "Mrs. Thornfield, Tommy told me about your accident. How are you doing?" "I'm doing better than people think, Joe. I need a big favor, and I need you to keep it completely confidential. Can you come by tomorrow morning? I'll explain everything then." "Of course, whatever you need." The next day, Joe arrived with a bag of equipment. I explained that I suspected Kevin and Amber were planning to steal from me, though I kept the murder plot to myself for now. "You want me to install hidden cameras in your own house?" Joe asked, surprised but not judgmental. "Small ones, with audio recording. I need to document what happens when they think I can't hear them." Joe was thorough and professional. Within 2 hours, he'd installed tiny cameras in the living room, kitchen, and hallway, all invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. "The audio quality is excellent," he assured me. "Everything will be recorded to a cloud server that only you can access." "Thank you, Joe. And remember, I was never here," he said with an understanding nod. "Take care of yourself, Mrs. Thornfield." Now I had everything I needed, a new will, legal counsel, and the ability to record their conversations. All I had to do was wait for them to provide the evidence that would destroy them. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, I got the conversation that would seal their fate. I was in my recliner, pretending to read while Kevin and Amber sat at the kitchen table with Kevin's laptop open. They thought I was safely trapped in my silent world, unaware that every word was being recorded. "I called Sunset Manor today," Amber announced. "They can take her next month if we want the spot." "How much?" Kevin asked. $4,000 a month plus additional fees for special care. But here's the thing. They want 6 months paid in advance. That's $24,000 up front, Kevin calculated. Plus, we'd need to liquidate some of her investments to cover ongoing costs. Which gives us the perfect excuse to get power of attorney, Amber said. We tell her it's to make sure her care is paid for. Kevin laughed. She'll sign anything if I tell her it's for her own good. She trusts me completely. What about after that? Amber asked quietly. What do you mean? I mean, what if she lives there for years? That's $48,000 a year. Kevin, even with her money that adds up. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. You're right. We need a more permanent solution. I've been thinking about that, Amber said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. About what I mentioned before, the medication thing. Go on? Well, once she's in the facility, we'd be managing all her medications anyway, and those places are understaffed. They rely on family members to help with pill management. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that elderly people in nursing homes die from medication errors all the time. It's tragic, but it happens. And with her recent head injury and age, no one would question it. My hands started trembling, but I forced myself to keep holding the book steady. How would we? Kevin started. I still have contacts from when I worked as a nurse, Amber said. I know which medications can cause problems when combined, especially in someone her age. Heart medications mixed with certain other drugs can cause cardiac events, completely undetectable in an elderly patient. Kevin paused. That's actually brilliant. The best part is, we'd look like the grieving family who did everything we could for her. No one would suspect anything. How long would it take? Kevin asked. A few months at most. We'd need to be gradual about it. Can't be too obvious. But by Christmas, we could be settling her estate. Christmas was only 2 months away. They were planning to murder me by Christmas. Speaking of the estate, Kevin said, I had Jake run those numbers on the house. In the current market, we're looking at least $850, maybe $900,000. Plus all her accounts, Amber added. We're talking about well over $2 million total. We'll get rid of that useless old hag and grab the inheritance, Kevin said with satisfaction. Best decision we ever made, moving in here. There it was, the exact phrase that would become the title of my story. But hearing it in person from my own son's mouth was like being stabbed in the heart. Just think, Amber continued. By next spring, we could buy that house we looked at in Riverside, the one with the pool and the 3-car garage. And I could finally quit that miserable real estate job, Kevin added. Maybe start my own company with real capital behind me. They were already spending my money, already planning their new life built on my murder. Are you sure she can't hear any of this? Amber asked suddenly. Kevin looked over at me. I kept my eyes focused on my book, turning a page at just the right moment. Completely deaf, he confirmed. We could set off fireworks in here and she wouldn't notice. Good, Amber said, because I want to show you what medications would work best. I heard her get up and leave the room, returning a few minutes later with her laptop. Look at this, she said. Digitalis toxicity combined with her current blood pressure medication. It would look like a heart attack brought on by the stress of adjusting to the nursing home. How do you know all this? Kevin asked, sounding impressed. I told you. I was a nurse for 8 years before we got married. I know exactly how these drugs interact, and more importantly, I know how to make it look accidental. They spent the next 20 minutes researching my murder like they were planning a vacation. I had to admire their thoroughness. If only they'd put this much effort into their actual careers, they might not have needed to kill me for money. When they finally closed their laptops and went to bed, I sat in the dark living room, shaking with rage and terror. But underneath those emotions was something else, something cold and determined. They wanted to play games with a helpless old woman? They had no idea who they were dealing with. Clearly, they'd forgotten that I'd spent decades outsmarting people who thought they were cleverer than me. The only difference between my son and a misbehaving 8-year-old was that Kevin was about to learn a much more expensive lesson. The next morning, I put on the performance of my life. I shuffled to breakfast, acting confused about which chair was mine. I fumbled with my coffee cup, spilling a little on the table. When Amber brought me my regular medications, I made a show of looking puzzled. Your morning pills, Margaret, she said slowly, exaggerating her lip movements. For your blood pressure and heart. I nodded vaguely and took the pills, but as I'd been doing for weeks, I palmed 2 unfamiliar white tablets that weren't part of my original prescription. Later, I'd examine them under my bedroom lamp. They were unmarked, but I was certain they weren't legitimate medication. "I need to run to the pharmacy today," Amber announced to Kevin. "Margaret's almost out of her heart medication." That was a lie. I had a full bottle in my medicine cabinet that they'd hidden from me. While they were both out that afternoon, I made several important phone calls. First, I called Dr. Martinez's office. "This is Margaret Thornfield. I need to schedule an appointment to review my current medications. I want to make sure I'm not taking anything that wasn't specifically prescribed for me." "Of course, Mrs. Thornfield. How about Thursday at 2? "Perfect. And please don't mention this appointment to anyone who might call asking about my care. I want to discuss some concerns privately with the doctor." Next, I called Detective Rodriguez at the local police station. Harrison had given me his name as someone who specialized in elder abuse cases. "Detective Rodriguez, this is Margaret Thornfield on Maple Street. I need to report a crime in progress. But it's complicated. Could you come by tomorrow morning around 10? My family will be out, and I need to speak with you privately." "What kind of crime are we talking about, Mrs. Thornfield?" "Financial exploitation and potentially attempted murder," I said simply. "But I have evidence, and I need your help to handle this properly." There was a pause. "I'll be there at 10 sharp. Finally, I called Harrison back. "I need you to contact the prosecutor's office. I want to know exactly what kind of evidence they'd need to press charges for elder abuse, financial exploitation, and attempted murder." "Margaret, what's happened?" "I'll explain tomorrow. Just find out what we need to build an airtight case." That evening, Kevin and Amber were particularly attentive at dinner. Kevin cut my meat for me without being asked, and Amber kept refilling my water glass. "Mom, we've been thinking," Kevin said, making sure I could see his lips clearly. "We want to make sure you're getting the best possible care." I nodded encouragingly. "We found a wonderful facility called Sunset Manor. It's specifically designed for people with hearing loss and other challenges. We think you'd be much happier there with professional staff and other people in similar situations." Amber leaned forward. "The best part is they handle all the medical management for you. No more worrying about pills or appointments. They take care of everything." I made my expression hopeful and trusting, like this sounded wonderful. "There are just some papers you'd need to sign," Kevin continued. "Legal stuff to make sure we can handle your finances and medical decisions while you're there. Just to protect you." I nodded eagerly and reached for his hand, squeezing it with apparent gratitude. Inside, I was disgusted by how easily they thought they could manipulate me. "We can take care of all that tomorrow," Amber said sweetly. "I'll call our lawyer and have him bring the documents by." Their lawyer. Not Harrison, who actually represented my interests. I was almost impressed by their audacity. Not only were they planning to steal from me, but they were bringing their own legal team to make it official. "And don't worry about the cost," Kevin added. "We'll make sure everything is handled properly. You just focus on getting better." That night, I lay in bed listening to them celebrate in the living room. "She actually seemed excited about the nursing home," Amber said, laughing. "Did you see how grateful she looked when I mentioned handling her finances?" Kevin replied. "This is going to be easier than we thought. How soon can we get the power of attorney paperwork?" "My guy said he can have everything ready by tomorrow afternoon. Once she signs, we'll have complete control over her accounts. And then we move her to Sunset Manor next week and start phase 2 of the plan." Phase 2. My murder. I closed my eyes and tried to stay calm. In less than 24 hours, Detective Rodriguez would be here. The cameras were recording everything. Dr. Martinez would confirm that the pills they'd been giving me weren't prescribed. They thought they were so clever, manipulating a helpless, deaf woman. They had no idea they'd been performing for an audience this entire time. Tomorrow, the show would be over. Detective Rodriguez arrived exactly at 10, just as Kevin and Amber left for what they thought was a routine morning of errands. He was a serious man in his 50s, with kind eyes and an air of competence that immediately put me at ease. "Mrs. Thornfield, you mentioned financial exploitation and attempted murder. Those are serious charges." "I know exactly how serious they are," I said, leading him to the living room. "And I have proof of everything. I started from the beginning. The accident, the fake deafness, the gradual revelation of their plans." Rodriguez took careful notes, asking precise questions about dates, times, and specific conversations. You said you have recordings? He asked. I showed him Joe's hidden cameras and played back several of the most damning conversations. Rodriguez's expression grew darker as he listened to Kevin and Amber discuss drugging me and planning my death. This is definitely attempted murder, he said grimly, plus elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy. We have enough here to arrest them both. I want to do this right, I said. I want them to face the full consequences of what they've planned. What do you have in mind? I smiled. They're coming back this afternoon with legal papers they want me to sign. Power of attorney documents that would give them complete control over my finances. I want you to witness that conversation. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. We'll need backup officers and probably social services involved. This is going to be a complex arrest. There's something else, I said, pulling out the envelope of white pills I'd been saving. They've been drugging me with these. I need them tested to prove what they were doing. Rodriguez examined the pills carefully. We'll fast-track the analysis. If these contain what I think they do, it adds another charge to the list. We spent another hour planning exactly how to handle the afternoon confrontation. Rodriguez would be hidden in the kitchen with a clear view of the living room, with backup officers positioned outside. Everything would be recorded from multiple angles. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Rodriguez asked. We could arrest them now based on what we already have. No, I said firmly. I want them to show their true colors one more time. I want there to be absolutely no doubt about their intentions. At 2 o'clock, Kevin and Amber returned with a man I didn't recognize, presumably their lawyer. I was sitting in my recliner, looking frail and confused as they entered. Mom, this is Mr. Patterson, Kevin said slowly, facing me so I could read his lips. He's here to help us with those papers we discussed. Patterson looked uncomfortable. Are you certain she understands what she's signing? She has good days and bad days, Amber interrupted. Today is a good day. She's very excited about moving to the care facility. I nodded enthusiastically and made happy gestures toward Patterson. The first document transfers power of attorney for all financial decisions, Patterson explained, though he was clearly addressing Kevin rather than me. The second gives you medical decision-making authority. Kevin guided my hand to the first signature line. This just means I can help pay your bills and manage your accounts, Mom, to make sure you're taken care of. I made my signature shaky and uncertain, like someone whose motor skills were declining. The second document is similar, Patterson continued. It allows your son to make medical decisions if you're unable to communicate your wishes. As I signed the second paper, Amber leaned over to Kevin. Once these are filed, we can move her next week, right? Absolutely, Kevin replied quietly. And then we can start the medication adjustments we discussed. Patterson looked sharply at them. What medication adjustments? Kevin and Amber exchanged glances. Just optimizing her care for the facility, Amber said smoothly. I have nursing experience, so I'll be coordinating with their medical staff. That was when Detective Rodriguez stepped out of the kitchen. Actually, I think we need to discuss those medication plans in more detail, he said, showing his badge. The room exploded into chaos. Patterson jumped back from the table. Kevin's face went white, and Amber immediately started talking. Officer, there's been some kind of misunderstanding, she began. No misunderstanding, Rodriguez said calmly. Margaret Thornfield, would you like to tell them what you've been hearing for the past several weeks? I stood up slowly, meeting Kevin's shocked eyes. I heard every word, I said clearly. Every conversation about stealing my money, every plan to put me in a nursing home, and every detail of how you planned to murder me. Kevin's mouth fell open. Mom, you can hear? I can hear perfectly, I said. I've been able to hear for weeks. I heard you call me a useless old hag. I heard you research ways to kill me with medication. I heard you plan to inherit my money and buy a house with a pool. Amber lunged forward. You don't understand. We were trying to help you. Help me? I laughed bitterly. By poisoning me with unmarked pills? By planning to drug me to death in a nursing home? Rodriguez stepped forward. Kevin Thornfield and Amber Thornfield, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, financial exploitation, and attempted poisoning. As the backup officers entered to handcuff them, Kevin looked at me with desperate eyes. Mom, please, I'm your son. My son died the day he decided I was worth more dead than alive. I said quietly. I don't know who you are anymore. The last thing I heard as they were led away was Amber screaming that I was a crazy old woman and no one would believe me. She was wrong. Everyone believed me. I had the recordings to prove it. Amazing how technology works when you're not too arrogant to think your victims might fight back. The story exploded across local news within hours. Son and daughter-in-law arrested for plotting to murder elderly mother. The recordings I'd captured were clear evidence of their guilt, and the pills they'd been giving me tested positive for a sedative that wasn't prescribed by any doctor. Dr. Martinez confirmed that the medication could have caused the confusion and weakness they'd been attributing to my head injury. In higher doses, or combined with certain other drugs, this could have been fatal, he told the prosecutors. Harrison handled the legal fallout beautifully. The power of attorney documents Kevin and Amber had tricked me into signing were immediately voided since they'd been obtained through fraud. More importantly, my new will remained sealed and unchanged. They never suspected you'd updated your will? Harrison asked during one of our meetings. They were so confident in their manipulation skills, I said. They thought I was just a helpless old woman who'd sign anything they put in front of me. Kevin and Amber's lawyer tried to argue that the recordings were obtained illegally, but since they were made in my own home with my consent, they were perfectly admissible. Their backup plan of claiming I was mentally incompetent fell apart when Dr. Martinez testified that my cognitive abilities were completely normal. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I testified on the first day, playing the recordings of their conversations about my planned murder. The jury looked horrified as they listened to Kevin describe me as a useless old hag and Amber research cardiac drugs to kill me with. Did you ever suspect your son might harm you? The prosecutor asked. Never, I said honestly. I loved him completely and trusted him with my life. That trust nearly got me killed. Kevin's lawyer tried to paint him as a stressed caregiver who'd made some poor comments but never intended actual harm. That argument crumbled when they played Amber's recorded research into lethal drug combinations. Amber's defense was even weaker. Her nursing background actually made her planning look more sinister, not less. The prosecutor pointed out that she knew exactly how to kill someone and make it look natural. This wasn't a moment of frustration or poor judgment, he told the jury. This was a cold, calculated plan to murder an elderly woman for her money. The verdicts came back guilty on all counts. Kevin received 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. Amber got 12 years for the same charges, though her sentence was slightly reduced because she hadn't been the primary beneficiary. As they were led away after sentencing, Kevin looked back at me one more time. I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, no lingering love. The son I'd raised was gone, replaced by a stranger who'd tried to kill me. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked if I felt justice had been served. Justice would have been having a son who loved me, I said. This is just consequences. 6 months later, I sold the house on Maple Street. Too many bad memories lived in those rooms now. I found a beautiful smaller home in a different neighborhood, 2 bedrooms, 1 story, with a lovely garden and a sunroom perfect for a piano. The money from the sale, combined with my investments, left me more financially secure than ever. Ironically, Kevin and Amber's scheme had forced me to take a hard look at my finances, and I discovered I was worth even more than they'd calculated. I could have traveled the world, bought luxury cars, lived like a queen. Instead, I did something that would have horrified my would-be murderers. I started spending money on myself and people I cared about. I bought a brand new grand piano for the sunroom and started teaching again. Not for money this time, but for the joy of sharing music with children who reminded me why life was worth living. My first student was Sophia Rodriguez, Detective Rodriguez's 8-year-old daughter. Mrs. Thornfield taught my daddy to catch bad guys, she announced to anyone who would listen. Now she's teaching me to play songs. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Soon, I had a waiting list of children eager to learn piano from the famous lady who caught the bad guys. Their parents paid me generously, but I put most of the money into a fund for music education in local schools. The house next door was occupied by the Gonzalez family, Maria, Carlos, and their 3 children. They'd moved from Mexico 5 years ago and worked incredibly hard to build a life here. Carlos was a landscaper. Maria cleaned offices at night, And all 3 kids were honor students. It started with small gestures. I'd make extra soup and bring some over. I'd help the youngest, Isabella, with her English homework. When their car broke down and they couldn't afford repairs, I quietly paid the mechanic. "Senora Margaret, you don't have to do this," Maria protested when she found out. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm just helping my neighbors the way neighbors should help each other." Within months, they'd adopted me as family. The children called me Abuela Margaret, and I was invited to every birthday, holiday, and celebration. When Isabella lost her first tooth, she ran to my house to show me before her own parents. "Why are you so kind to us?" Carlos asked one evening as we sat on my porch watching the kids play. "Because you treat me like family," I said simply. "Real family isn't about blood. It's about love and respect." The contrast wasn't lost on me. Kevin, my biological son, had seen me as nothing but a source of money to be eliminated when convenient. The Gonzalez family saw me as a person worth caring about, worth including, worth loving. When Maria's mother in Mexico became seriously ill, they couldn't afford the trip home. I bought their plane tickets without hesitation. "We can't accept this," Carlos said, tears in his eyes. "You're not accepting charity," I told him firmly. "You're accepting help from someone who loves you. There's a difference." While they were gone, I missed them terribly. Their house felt empty, and my own house felt too quiet without Isabella's laughter echoing from next door. That's when I realized something important. I wasn't just helping them. They were saving me too. 1 year after the trial, I received a letter from Kevin in prison. My first instinct was to throw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mom," it began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not just sorry I got caught, but sorry for what I planned to do to you. Prison gives you a lot of time to think, and I've been thinking about what kind of person I became." The letter went on for 3 pages, detailing his regrets and claiming he'd found religion behind bars. He talked about the therapy programs he was attending and how he was working on himself. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote in closing, "but I hope someday you might be willing to visit me. I want to try to explain how I lost my way so badly." I read the letter twice, then walked to my fireplace and burned it. Some people might call that harsh, but I'd learned something important over the past year. Forgiveness doesn't require you to let toxic people back into your life. I could forgive Kevin for my own peace of mind without ever trusting him again. 2 weeks later, I received a similar letter from Amber. Hers was shorter and angrier, claiming she'd been led astray by Kevin and that her sentence was unfair. She blamed me for tricking them with my fake deafness and suggested that everything that happened was somehow my fault. I didn't even finish reading that one before it joined Kevin's letter in the fireplace. Harrison stopped by that afternoon with some legal papers to sign, something about finalizing the asset transfers from my old will. "Any word from Kevin or Amber?" he asked carefully. "Nothing worth mentioning," I said. "How are they adjusting to prison life?" "Kevin's in a minimum security facility. He's apparently been a model prisoner, participating in educational programs. Amber's having a harder time at the women's correctional facility. She's been written up several times for fighting with other inmates." "I'm not surprised," I said. Kevin was always better at playing the victim, when it suited him. Harrison studied my face. "Do you ever regret how things turned out?" I thought about that question for a long moment. I regret that my son became someone capable of planning my murder. I regret that I raised a child who could see his mother as nothing but a source of money. But do I regret stopping them? Never. What about the inheritance? They would have gotten everything if you hadn't changed your will. I smiled. The best part is, they still think they would have inherited millions. They don't know that every penny is going to charity. Even in prison, they're probably still fantasizing about the money they'll never see. That evening, I sat in my sunroom playing piano while Isabella and her brothers did homework at my kitchen table. This had become our routine. They'd come over after school, I'd help with homework and give piano lessons. Then Maria would collect them for dinner. "Abuela Margaret," Isabella said, looking up from her math problems. "My teacher said you're famous." "What did she tell you?" "She said you're very brave, and you caught some bad people who wanted to hurt you." I considered how to explain this to an 8-year-old. Sometimes people we trust disappoint us badly. But that doesn't mean we stop trusting everyone. It means we learn to choose better people to trust. "Like us?" she asked hopefully. "Exactly like you," I said, ruffling her hair. You and your family are the best choice I ever made." 2 years after the trial, my life had settled into a rhythm that filled me with contentment I'd never experienced before. My little house was always full of music and laughter. The Gonzalez children had become genuine experts on the piano, and I'd started a small recital program that brought families from all over our neighborhood together. Detective Rodriguez and his wife became regular dinner guests, along with Harrison and his family. Joe Martinez, who'd installed my security cameras, often stopped by with his grandchildren for impromptu music lessons. "You've built quite a community here," Harrison observed during one of our monthly dinners. "I've learned that the best revenge is living well," I said. "Kevin and Amber wanted to erase me from existence and take my money. Instead, I'm more alive than I've been in years, and my money is going to causes that actually matter." The local newspaper had done a follow-up story on my case, focusing on elder abuse prevention. I'd become an inadvertent spokesperson for elderly people who were being mistreated by family members. "The hardest part," I told the reporter, "is accepting that someone you love sees you as disposable. But once you accept that reality, you can take steps to protect yourself." The story led to speaking invitations at senior centers and community groups. I'd tell my story and talk about warning signs that family members might be planning financial exploitation, or worse. "Trust your instincts," I'd always tell the audiences. "If someone's behavior toward you changes dramatically, especially after you become vulnerable, pay attention. Don't dismiss red flags because you want to believe the best about people you love." After one such speaking engagement, an elderly woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "My daughter has been acting strange since my husband died," she said quietly. "She's been asking a lot of questions about my will and suggesting I might be safer in assisted living. After hearing your story, I'm worried." I gave her Harrison's card and Detective Rodriguez's contact information. "Don't wait to get help," I told her. "It's better to be wrong about suspicions than to be right and unprepared." 3 months later, she called to thank me. Her daughter had indeed been planning to drug her and claim power of attorney under false pretenses. The police investigation I'd encouraged had prevented another tragedy. "You saved my life," she said. "You saved your own life by listening to your instincts," I corrected. "I just gave you permission to trust what you already knew." On the 3rd anniversary of my accident, I threw a party, not to celebrate my fall, but to celebrate my survival and the wonderful life I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. The Gonzalez family decorated my house with flowers and balloons. Isabella, now 11 and an accomplished pianist, performed a solo she'd been practicing for weeks. Carlos grilled hamburgers while Maria made her famous salsa. Detective Rodriguez brought his famous potato salad, and Harrison showed up with enough ice cream to feed a small army. As I looked around my backyard full of people who genuinely cared about me, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not gratitude for what Kevin and Amber had tried to do. I'll never be thankful for that betrayal. But gratitude for the strength I'd found to fight back, and for the real family I'd discovered in the process. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out, and soon everyone was chanting for me to say something. I stood up, looking at the faces of people who'd chosen to love me not for what I could give them, but for who I was. 3 years ago, I learned that the family you're born into isn't always the family that will stand by you, I began. But I also learned that the family you choose, the people who see your worth and celebrate your existence, those relationships are stronger than blood. I raised my glass of lemonade. To chosen family, to second chances, and to the truth that no one can take away your dignity unless you let them. "To Margaret," everyone cheered. And I felt more blessed than any millionaire had a right to feel. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up with Maria and Isabella, my young honorary granddaughter asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. "Abuela Margaret, do you ever miss your real son?" I thought carefully before answering. "I miss the son I thought I had," I said finally. "But I don't miss the person he actually turned out to be. And I'm grateful every day that I found out the truth before it was too late." "Are you happy now?" Isabella asked. I looked around my house, filled with pictures of my chosen family, echoing with the music we made together, warm with the love we shared freely. "Happier than I've ever been in my life," I said, and I meant every word. The boy I'd raised had tried to erase me for money. Instead, he'd given me the greatest gift of all, the chance to discover who I really was when I stopped trying to please people who didn't deserve my love. I was Margaret Thornfield, 74 years old, surrounded by people who saw me as a treasure rather than a burden. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all. Who knew that attempted murder could be such an excellent life coach? Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.